I looked up at the judge, and I saw the power that the judge had, and the power, if used appropriately, that could change lives. And at that moment, I realized that if I could be given that power, I could change lives for the better. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to help people. I wanted to set them on the right path. I wanted to give them direction.
That's perfect. So when you do that, when you help people like this, what does that do for you? What does that get you?
It gives me a sense of worth. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. It gives me a feeling that I saved someone's life, just like you do every day in the ER. That feeling that you get that you kept someone alive. I believe I'm keeping someone alive. The difference between me and Judge Judy, she makes millions. Yeah, I'd like to make millions. I save lives.
I'm Dr. Larry Burchett, and as I see every day in the ER, life can change in a moment. On this show, we tell the stories that matter most, after which we are never the same. We've got one for you today. Judge Mary Chrzanowski.
Hey.
Scary Mary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is really an honor and a privilege and everything in between. Thanks.
So, Dr. Judy Ho, you've worked with her on television.
Face the Truth, absolutely. We worked together for a year on that show. We worked together on The Doctors.
I was
phenomenal
like,
woman.
Judy, do you have anybody who'd be good for the show? And she said no. And then, no, I'm kidding. And then she said you, of course.
Oh my God, I know Scary Mary, right?
It's like, Mary's great. You got to have her on the show. So here you are. I'm happy to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's really an honor.
So are you a real judge?
No, I got my certificate out of a Cheerios box. What kind of question is that?
I don't know.
I'm a retired circuit judge from Macomb County, Michigan. And a circuit court in Michigan is the highest trial court. So I presided over a variety of cases, major felony cases, divorce cases, family issues regarding juvenile delinquencies, civil cases, medical malpractice, breach of contract, everything basically but a probate.
I don't know what probate.
Probate would be wills and estates.
So you got some range legally.
I really have done a lot. I didn't do stuff like, traffic tickets. I was presiding over major felonies, murders and rapes and robberies.
What was some of your favorite stuff to preside
Criminal's
over?
always my favorite because it was always intriguing. It was always, sometimes you had medical testimony, sometimes listening to a forensic the pathologist, trying to listen to see, did this person beyond a reasonable doubt commit a crime? I mean, it was like watching television all the time. Because you're there, you're actually seeing the evidence, and you're presiding over a case. You're watching attorneys as they struggle, as they they're proud of their performance. It was the best job I could ever ask for.
Wow.
My years of experience, I've seen so much in terms, of tears, in the divorces. You see, good people at their very worst. In criminal cases, you see bad people at their very best. I can't even begin to tell you. I have boxes full of newspaper articles of all the cases I ever presided over. And sometimes I go back, you cry over them because you think of the victims and you think about things that had happened that were pretty traumatic.
Sounds like you really loved being a judge.
I did. But there came a point where I was like waking up in the middle of the night reciting the rights. What's your name? How old are you? Can you, all of the questions that I would ask for a criminal plea. And if I could have taken a year off and said, I need a break after 24 years, like a mental break, I just needed to chill.
A little burnout.
That would have been great, but I couldn't do that. So I attempted to change my judging, and I tested and I applied for a job as a federal administrative law judge working for the Social Security Department, of which I did for only 9 months because I couldn't tolerate sitting in a room reviewing medical records 8 hours a day. I couldn't do it.
Does not sound as exciting as
I didn't have the jury.
Court drama.
I didn't have the jury.
Before.
I didn't have the defendants. I didn't have the interaction with people as much as I did when I was a circuit judge.
Yeah, that does not sound
So then I
fun.
retired, and I just, I live part-time in Florida, and full-time my legal residence is Michigan because that's always going to be home.
You Michigan State fan?
I'm both Michigan and Michigan State.
That doesn't exist, Mary.
I didn't go to either, but I promote both teams when they play each other. For the sake of my nephews still loving their aunt, they went to Michigan. I'm a big Michigan
I'm
supporter.
going to show you, just like I showed, how good of a host. Look at that.
I know. I'm just flattered. Thank you.
Am I a nice host? Went to the Michigan Notre Dame game a little bit ago. I forget who won, but it was a great time.
Yeah,
in the
don't
big
even
house.
go that way. Yeah,
So what's your moment?
What's my moment? Is that what you want to know, really?
That was what I was mumbling under my breath, trying to change the...
It's my moment. You want to get away from the football? Because we could talk football.
Well, maybe next year. Let's talk, when they play again.
Okay.
In
They're not
2033
33, right. They'll be wheeling me in a wheelchair.
Let's do it. Let's go to the game.
Okay, you're on.
We usually talk about a moment, a particular moment.
Sure.
Do you have one that comes to mind?
My whole life is a series of moments, but I think the defining moment in my life is when I decided what I wanted to do with my life. You get out of high school, you're kind of lost. What do I want to be? I wanted to be so many things. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a nurse. I couldn't do the math, so that kind of blew me right out of the window. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll go and become a cop, because that's cool. You walk around, you're dressed nice, you're helping people. That was my motivation. And I had a cousin who was a circuit court judge, and he said to me, why would you want to stop at just getting a bachelor's degree? Why don't you go on and get a law degree and become a lawyer and then eventually become a judge? And I thought, become a judge? How am I ever going to become a judge? I mean, that is just, for me, it was like, wow, there's this guy that sits up there, this woman that sits up there making these important decisions. How could I do that? So I never had been in a courtroom, and I went and I watched them, and the bells really went off. And I sat in that courtroom and I watched all the characters, the prosecutor, the probation officer, and I said, I want to be the judge. And from the age of 18 on, there was no stopping me. I finished college in 3 years. I went into law school and finished that. I could have done that in 2.5, but I did it in 3. I did get stuck up, though, in terms of, I think it was God's need to stop and slow me down, flunking the bar. So I flunked the bar 3 times, kind of like John F. Kennedy. It's the one thing I share with that handsome
What did he
young
do?
man. He flunked it 3 times.
He did?
2 or 3, yeah.
I never heard that before.
The son, I'm talking about Junior.
JFK Jr.?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, not the president.
And I think that was just a way of slowing me down. Then I, ultimately passed the bar exam, and I ran for judge my first time when I was 28 years old.
This is an elected position.
Yes, which was unprecedented. You don't run at 28. Who are you, you punk-nosed kid, And I ran, and I lost, and I said, I'm not stopping. This is a dream that I have, and I want to become a judge. So the next time I ran was 2 years later, which was the next available time to run. And this time, instead of running for an open seat, I ran against 3 incumbents who happened to be established male judges who were there forever. And I figured, I'm going to take one of them down. And I did.
How did that happen?
I was very fortunate in that there were 6 names on the ballot. 5 were men. I was the only woman. And it was a time when the women were beginning to get strong and running for positions and being vocal about it's time that we let women into these positions. So I got lucky in that respect, but also, my cousin having the same last name and he being a judge for so long, that also helped. Living in a community dominantly Polish and predominantly Italian.
Chrzanowski.
The ethnicity helped with the name, and I didn't give up. I was very fortunate at the age of 30. I was elected at 30, and I took office at 31.
Wow, so young. Good for you. When was that, roughly?
I ran it in 1992, took office in 93.
Good for you.
So I stayed. I enjoyed every minute of my job.
How long were you a judge?
24 years in that position,
Wow.
And then 9 months as the administrative law judge. So
You sound like an overachiever.
not necessarily. I just had that
3 years
moment.
of high school.
Oh no, I studied. Nothing ever came easy for me. I studied hard.
I don't mean easy, but like motivated and intense.
I had to get there, and there was nothing. I didn't want to wait. I didn't stop. I got to have it now. And that's how I live my life. I want it now. And there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting there.
So motivated.
Well, maybe, I guess.
So it sounds like you said when you were in high school, didn't know what you wanted to do, and an uncle?
First cousin.
Cousin suggested you go and check out the courtroom.
Yeah.
Tell me, how old were you then?
18.
What were you like? What was 18-year-old Mary like?
Confused.
Senior in high school?
Yeah, I was senior, getting ready to graduate, heading out to college.
What were you thinking when you were confused?
What am I going to do? What do I want to do the rest of my life?
Thinking about your career,
right.
job-wise.
Oh, absolutely. Well, do I want to work at the local convenience store the rest of my life? Do I want, to go and educate myself and become a professional? Do I want to be an x-ray technician? I mean, I had thoughts of being everything until that moment when I saw that courtroom and that setting and that guy sitting up on that bench and that guy helping people. Being able to get the attention of the people in front of him and say, it's time for you to wake up. It's time for you to recognize your mistakes. It's time for you to change your life. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to get into people's faces. I wanted to be able to step up and say, here's what you're doing wrong. Let's turn it around and become a better person. And that was the platform in which I was able to accomplish that end.
Do you remember that judge that you watched?
That was my cousin.
Oh, that was your cousin.
Yes.
That was his.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
courtroom.
Robert Chrzanowski.
And he was kind of this empowered figure that was helping people.
Right.
And it sounds like kind of the whole environment and then his position and abilities and all that really made an impact with you.
And it was just the bells went off. This is it. I figured it out. I finally figured it out. And then I went right through school, went through law school. And then, of course, the Lord slowed me down with flunking the bar.
So take me back to this. Let's get into this moment a little bit. Like, I'm curious. It sounds like it in that courtroom was planted some seed, almost like a switch for you, that then set you on this track where you're like, judge, bench, or bust.
Yes.
And you went full throttle from there on out.
And unfortunately, you've got to become an attorney before you can become a judge.
You didn't like that.
I didn't want to be an attorney. I never wanted to be an attorney. I just wanted to be the judge. And I got lucky. I was able to do that within 5 years of my passing the bar exam.
You have to be a trial attorney, really,
no,
don't you?
and in fact, the law basically changed when I was when I won so young. The law now in Michigan says you have to be an attorney for 5 years. There was no law like that when I initially ran. And and then a cousin after me, also she ran very young and won. It kind of changed the whole aspect of we better get some rules in place because we're going to have kids right out of law school winning and becoming judges with what they claim no experience.
I see. Need more experience.
Life is my experience, though.
Let me ask you this. I want to get into this moment a little bit. I want to know, almost like from when you walked into the courtroom, within that day or evening or whatever it was, when did this thing fully, it wasn't the second you walked in and saw it. Did it take a couple hours? Was there a particular thing that he said?
No, it was probably, an hour or 2 hours just watching the fact that this man was able to sit there and give direction to people. And hopefully, I was hoping, or I believed, he was trying to give direction to people so that they could go out and have a good life.
Did he
turn them around?
Did he see multiple people in that time?
Oh, they were all criminals. I mean, so here's a criminal, here's the sentence, this is what you've got to do. You give them a little lecture, and you need to get your life together. You need to change what you're doing with your life, or you're not going to become anything.
Do you remember any of the specific ones?
No, I can't remember that. That was so long ago.
Yeah.
It was just the whole phenomenon that, man, I could really help people. I could have this power and ability to change lives.
That's what you really liked
it was cool.
the most.
And I didn't have to worry about them dying on an operating table. Because that's why I probably couldn't have been a doctor either. I would have felt really bad about somebody dying on me. But I could still change lives. I have
felt really bad about that. That's true.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of things that feel worse. Yeah.
And for me now, even, as I left the bench, I still get emails from people on Facebook, wanting to be my friend saying, you saved my life, thank you. You gave me direction. I found focus in my life because you put me in jail. I'll walk into the local Costco, somebody will stop me and say, you know, thanks, Judge, you saved me. I didn't like going to prison for 5 years, but it saved my life. I accomplished what I set out to do.
Tell me a little bit about that, about people that come in that you would meet and you'd catch them at a certain point in their life. Are there general things that these folks needed? Is it all individual?
Well, every time you're dealing with somebody was an individual person. What were your problems? What was your history? What is your crime? Do you have an addiction? So it's a little bit of everything that you're dealing with, trying to figure out why they act the way that they do, which encompasses a little bit of psychology, you know, the knowledge of, well, why would you do something, and getting into their brain and trying to figure them out and understand them. So it was a constant, every case presented a new factual situation. So every case was a new dilemma for me. How am I going to save this guy? How am I not going to save this guy? You know, I love the criminal aspect of my job more than any aspect that I ever encountered.
Yeah, you keep saying that that's a theme, that you really liked that the most. Because of your ability to help, or because somebody needed it the most, or?
Because I was able to give people direction.
That was mainly
and
what, that was like
save their lives.
A big thing that they needed, and they were going in the wrong
People who
direction.
stood in front of me needed direction. They needed structure. Most criminals need structure. They need direction. They need somebody to motivate them to say, you know, maybe like I was motivated. You know, maybe I should get that job. Maybe I could become, you know, the EKG technician. Maybe I could go to school. So you give them the path. You know, you get off the drugs. We get you treatment. We get you your high school education. The greatest story that happened in my court, not my court, but in my courthouse. M&M, Marshall Mathers, stood before one of our judges, and he got sentenced to getting his high school diploma, among other things. And the attorney looked at the judge and said, Judge, this guy makes $50 million. What's he need a high school education for? And the judge says, everybody needs a high school education. Everybody needs that structure. Everybody needs to be proud of an accomplishment. And I never forgot that, and I integrated that in my thought process as well. Go get an education. Feel good about yourself having accomplished something.
What was he in for?
He had drug issues. You know.
After he was successful and famous and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so one of the...
And we were his local courtroom because he lived in my jurisdiction. In fact, I had a case with him as well, but it was a civil case.
Can you think of some stories of people that you helped that stand out for you?
Well, just anybody. The drug people who would come in front of me, and you'd give them their sentence, and you'd say, "Listen, you got to stop the drugs." You know, and maybe we should save this for part 2. Part of my ability to save people is that I'm an alcoholic, and I realized that probably 10 years into my being a judge. So I'm able to sit on that bench, and when they tell me you don't understand what I'm going through, I can say, "Yeah, I understand what you're going through." You know, you wake up in the middle of the night, you know, before you go to sleep, you're thinking, do I have enough alcohol tomorrow to get me through the day? And they'd like look at me and say, how do you know that? How do you, and I would tell them. And I became very honest with the fact I lived that way too for a period of time, where I became dependent on a substance that I wasn't proud of, but for me it was the only way I was going to go to sleep. So I was able to relate to people, and they would look at me and say, you know, you really do get it. You do understand the issues in addiction. You understand what it is to live that life. And that enabled me to be a great judge, I think.
Talk
because
to me.
they would say, my God, you get it, Judge. Thank you. And if you could do it, I can do it.
Inspiring.
Yes.
In that way.
Yeah.
So from the bench, what can you do? What are the best things for addiction? What would you prescribe to those folks?
We had drug courts, which I enjoyed, and I presided over the drug court, which is a specialized court where we bring people in and we give them specialized attention to help them with their issues, as opposed to just giving them a general probationary period where they check in, they pee in a cup, and they're on their way. In the drug court, we're going to have individualized therapy. We're going to have group sessions. We're going to have socialization. We're going to bring their family. We're going to take them and the family to the Tigers game. You know, the Tigers would donate tickets. The Lions would donate stuff. And it's an entire structure that is bent on helping people with their disease and recognizing that addiction is a disease. So that was special for me to be able to preside over that type of court, which is a specialized court within our court. So basically, to answer your question, I guess it's just you give them individualized treatment. You get them the therapy, you get them the pee in the cup, you get them to give accountability to their lives, and you give them structure. You're going to get your GED, your high school diploma, you're going to pee in a cup for me, we're going to watch you for 2 years, we're going to make sure that you're on the straight and narrow.
There's consequences if
Yes.
you don't.
Oh, absolutely. You violate your probation, you're looking at going to prison.
One of the questions I'm kind of have thinking about this is like your thoughts on kind of rehabilitation versus punitive in the court system.
Our judicial system and our criminal justice system is one of two things. It should be both, and it is kind of both, rehabilitation and punishment. But if we don't rehabilitate people and we just purely punish them, they're going to come back in through the revolving door. And that's what we basically have got going on right now, because there's no money really out there to rehabilitate the way people should be rehabilitated.
I've heard a lot about private jails and prisons and big money and that kind of stuff. Why isn't there money to rehabilitate people? It seems to me that if you can pay for a prison to put people away, you ought to be able to pay for to rehabilitate them.
We don't have private prisons in our state or federal government. Okay, so you are paying.
Where am I hearing these ideas that
I don't know, but it's a great idea because I had that idea today earlier on a different show. I thought, why don't we privatize prisons so that we've got the ability to give people individualized attention as opposed to throwing them into a cell with 15 other people and just having them eat every day. Maybe when they're in prison, teach them how to weld, teach them how to make a license plate. But let's get to the why are you here? What are your issues?
Yeah.
And we need to educate the public. Somebody gets out of prison, they may genuinely never do it again. Give them the opportunity, give them employment. Because when you get out of prison, what do? First question on an employment application, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to hire that guy. I mean, that's the mentality out there.
You want people to have a chance.
Yeah. So, potential employers need to wake up and they need to give these people a chance. But everybody's reluctant to do that.
It's a little risky.
Yeah, well, there's a stigma.
Yeah.
But what about the guy that truly will never do it again? It was a fluke thing. He woke up, 15 years in prison. I'm never going to do this. I don't want to live my life like that. Give them a chance. And if they blow it, well, then they're back into the system.
Here's a question for you that Dr. Judy and I talked about because she's a forensic psychologist. Right. Do you believe that some people are born evil? She had her opinion as, from kind of the...
I think it's a learned behavior. I think it's a social economic upbringing for some people.
Environmental thing.
Yes.
Largely.
I really, unless they have some type of mental illness that causes an evilness in them, there's a difference. But for the most part, I do believe it's a learned behavior.
She was suggesting that she thought there were some people that were kind of born sociopaths, so that even if you put them in a good environment,
well, genetically, I'm sure that's been proven.
Genetically, that they would end up turning out.
That's like somebody that's born with multiple sclerosis that has that gene. That person that's born with Down syndrome that lacks the chromosome. I'm sure that there's a fundamental physiological basis for that.
I just think of it interesting in terms of identifying that gene and then the implications of how that matters.
Wouldn't that be awesome if we could figure that out?
It's a new dilemma if it were.
Come up with a magical pill that could cure criminality? Wouldn't that be cool?
Oh, you're thinking of medicating it. I was thinking of locking them away.
No, not me. No, I don't want to lock. Think about that. That was the hardest part of my job. You want to put a human being in a 6x9 cell for 15 years? Never seeing the outside world, living with other people who committed the same crimes, different crimes, living in fear for your life in the prison system. I mean, it's just barbaric to me.
What's the alternative?
We don't have one. We don't have one.
What should it
be? But
be?
we need to start treating addiction. Because 98% of all of the people that come in front of me, 90% statistically, I'm not sure, but the major amount of people were all because of an addiction issue.
You go further and say, why are they addicted?
Well, if we knew that, we'd be living in Maui and we wouldn't be here, would we?
Trauma. I would say trauma. Moments, bad ones.
Misguidance
Yeah.
in life.
Childhood stuff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But how do we change that? We got to get to the families. We got to get to the environments that they live in.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is environment. You know, there's a Surgeon General of California. I forget her name, but she did this work with children that showed that the number one determinant of their health later was if they were abused as a child, kind of putting trauma at the forefront and diagnosing and treating that as an underlying cause of all this. Addiction, big deal. But it's like, well, why do people use a substance? There's something that they're self-medicating for.
I'll tell you a
under
story.
that.
You know how I'm sitting there one day and I'm reading somebody's pre-sentence report. The young man was in front of me for selling drugs, some drug offense. No biggie. It was like a 4-year major. 4 years in prison would be the max, which it would never happen. It was his first offense. And I'm reading through his report, and I look at it, and it's like, works at NASA, works on rockets. And I'm like, this guy's genuinely a rocket scientist. I mean, I was shocked. There was no history of any abuse in his family. So whatever happened to him, and he spiraled totally out of control. He ended up in prison. I gave him so many chances, tried to change, to give him the rehab, and it just wasn't clicking. And that might have been something that happened through his employment, something that happened that he couldn't handle the pressure. Who knows what was going through on? The guy was brilliant, but it snapped.
Something. Just
You
got
know, where
hooked.
all of a sudden drugs became his best friend, and he could not get rid of them.
That's hard.
It is. And then you've got his mom and dad sitting in the audience crying. What did we do wrong? Where did we go wrong? We raised him. We gave him the best education, Judge. What could we have done different? I don't know the answer.
It's a good question.
And then, of course, you've got the opposite spectrum, where mom and dad are getting high every day. They're on doing drugs. The kid's going to pick up that, and the kid becomes an addict as well.
What do you think about legalizing some of these harder drugs, like Portugal, for example? Legalizing all this stuff.
Going to have a lot of dead people.
I think so. You would not be in favor of it.
No, there has to be some type of control because things would get out of hand. I worry about the legalization of marijuana, not because, you don't want, I believe that marijuana helps certain people. I had a brother dying of cancer. He had the ability to smoke weed, but he didn't want to do that. I believe that in some instances it is a cure, not a cure, but a way to deal in pain management. But what happens with people who are smoking marijuana and they're driving in a vehicle and they get pulled over? Or here we go again, it's the drunk driving, getting in a vehicle, killing people under the influence. Well, that's never going to happen with marijuana. It does.
I think you still have the under the influence driving
but
laws
you
and
do,
stuff like
but
that.
it's hard because
and
we
you've got a
we got a
public
breathalyzer
perception.
test for.
How do you test that?
Yeah.
So we just have a urine test,
Right.
In terms of a concentration.
Right.
I see. It's like
but
any marijuana is not okay.
Well, we legalized alcohol, and what do we have? We've got multiple deaths. We've got people driving under the influence. You get on a roll. Well, the same
I think
thing's going to.
the opposite argument for marijuana is there's so many nonviolent criminals that are in jail from that it's like, is this really that bad? It's a justice issue, filling up the jails, all that stuff. I think that's like one of the biggest, let these guys out. This is ridiculous.
Simple possession charges could get you 90 days in jail. Why are we going to put them in jail? Just let them go.
That stuff sounds reasonable to me.
Sure. As long as you're not going to get behind a vehicle and drive while you're under the influence. As long as you're not going to get so whacked out that you're going to go and rob a store, You
got that judge thing coming out.
Well, you get me riled up, man. I'm ready.
My concern with that context of marijuana is people forget alcohol. I think people know much more getting behind the wheel is a risk, but marijuana, I think now is.
Are you kidding me?
Not as appreciated.
I drove better when I was drunk. That's how you think when you're an alcoholic. When you're driving drunk, you drive better, right? I can do this. Don't tell me that somebody who's smoking marijuana is thinking differently. They can do everything. But your reaction time, come on. I mean, your ability to stop, your ability, what are you seeing when you're driving?
I think people forget that in that case, marijuana is not like smoking a cigarette. It does impair your driving.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
You did drunk driving? Did you ever get a DUI?
Yes.
You did?
I got arrested for it, yeah.
How many?
I almost killed my mother in a vehicle in an accident.
Oh my! You were in an accident?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, 1987. I've
How
been
did this
sober for
affect your
17 years now.
judgeness?
I wasn't a judge then.
Oh, you're right. Early 90s.
That
Was that right after law school? Were you a lawyer?
In 1987, I graduated law school in 1985, and I had just become a lawyer in August, and the accident was Christmas, so it was like 2 months after I became an attorney.
You said you were an alcoholic for 10 years?
No, I was an alcoholic from probably the age of 18 to, and in the different degrees of alcoholism, from about 10 to 40. I mean, from about the age of 18 to 40.
20
40
years.
is when I stopped drinking. So it'll be 17 years on the 27th.
Good for you. Why did you stop?
I had one of those moments. I lost my mom. My mom had died. And I realized that the only person that ever really loved me isn't there anymore, and that I better be taking care of myself because no one else is going to. And I didn't want to lose everything that I had accomplished in my life. And I felt at that point that the alcoholism was getting out of control. And how did I know that? Because Mary I never called in sick, ever. I never went to work drunk. I knew when I had to stop at night, but I never called in sick. And the first day that I called in sick because I was hungover was the day that I finally realized after she'd died, I better get my shit together.
So when your drinking had affected your job, which was really important to you, that's when you...
It didn't affect my job, but it affected my ability to get up in the morning. And that first time scared me because all of a sudden, what am I becoming? I'm not going to call in sick. I never called in sick. I had too many people that depended upon me. You know, I had a courtroom of people waiting for me, 40, 50 people, all waiting to hear their cases. And that day, I had to call in sick.
Oh, so you canceled on all of them.
Right, and there's nobody to fill in for me.
Felt bad about that.
You know, and then it's a realization that it's taking control of your life, and it shouldn't be. And I couldn't use that as a crutch any longer. My best friend, alcohol. It helped me forget about what I dealt with on a daily basis. It helped me escape from the realities of what I was seeing in life. The bad. I mean, I saw bad stuff every day. You know, visualize pictures and sitting through 4,000 pictures of a adult man penetrating a 4-year-old. You know, the murder scenes, the blood. I mean, you internalize that. You can project that it doesn't bother you, but it did. So I'd go home and I'd drink myself to sleep. I'm not proud of it. I mean, that's certainly not a way that I want to, you want people to remember me, and that's why I stopped.
Cold turkey one day?
I went to see a therapist for a little while, but I knew I was done. I knew that I had to change my life. I knew that somehow I had to find a different avenue to not internalize what I was doing, and I become obsessed with bicycling. And that's what I had done. I would bicycle 12 miles at lunch. I'd come back after work and I'd bicycle another 12 miles.
So you traded what alcohol was helping you cope with the intensity of your job.
With the physical.
Bicycling.
Yes.
I'm surprised.
And I really became an addict. So then when I couldn't bicycle because I lived in Michigan, in the winter I would go to the YMCA or the gym and I would do bicycling at the gym. It was my way to let go. People would ride by me on the bike and see me after and say, "Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you say hello?" Because I was in the zone. It was my way of getting rid of my anger for what I had seen that day, my frustrations on things that I had seen that day, and it just became my escape. It was my new escape, was bicycling.
Sounds like it worked.
It did. 17 years later, and I really don't even think of alcohol. You can sit here and drink it from it. It doesn't bother me. I don't want anything to do with it anymore.
Still biking?
Oh yeah, biking and walking. Now that I'm in Florida for the winter, I walk every day on the beach and I love it. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And I also took up weightlifting during that period of time.
Kid.
When I was bicycling, because that's like where you really feel strong, and you're really in control. So. You
deadlift?
I did everything.
Oh, you don't do it anymore?
No. Not as intense as I did. No.
Get you back to that weightlifting.
I have to because my back is weak and I've got to do that.
Were you close to your mom?
Yes. My father died when I was 4. I had 4 brothers that were all older than me, and she became my responsibility, so to speak, as she got older. She had me later in life, so it was basically my responsibility to care for her, take care of her, do everything. She didn't drive. I mean, I was her little girl. I was the only girl, and it was kind of like the other reason I drank. I felt this responsibility that why can't I just live my life? Why do I have to take care of her all the time? And I love my mom, don't get me wrong. She raised 5 kids. My dad died. My oldest brother was 18. My mom had a 10th grade education, and she ran the funeral home that my father had established. But I internalized that. It was my burden. It was me. I had to take care of her.
Kind of resent that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, I did.
Like, you mean that your siblings, that you were stuck with it?
Right. Well, you're the only girl. You're supposed to do that. Well, where's that written at? Where do you get that from?
The youngest.
So, and that was the reason too that I drank. And I knew why I drank. Most people don't analyze, why do I drink? What is causing me to run to the bottle? They just do it without thinking there's an underlying reason. And there usually is a reason. You're running from something.
You were kind of angry that you had that responsibility.
Yes, very much. I had a great guy. I was going to get married. He loved this guy. Mother hated him. For whatever reason, and I know the reason, she was going to lose me.
Oh.
And I made a decision that I did not want to live my life or the rest of her life with her not liking my spouse. And I kind of kicked him to the curb. And I shouldn't have. And I'm sorry that I did that.
Was that a mistake?
I don't know. Maybe it really wasn't love. Because wouldn't I have been fighting for him more? I don't know.
Sounds conflicted.
Yeah. What's the answer? So, yeah, you know what? We're not perfect people, judges. We come to the bench and we bring a lot of stuff with us. We bring our entire background. So, I bring growing up in a funeral home. I bring living next door to the convent from the Catholic church that we went to. I bring losing a father young. All of those emotions that you can integrate in deciding cases and in people's lives. I think it'd be a great television show where you have a judge who goes back, how they have shows where you go back to their childhood and their thought process and events that happened in their life. And that's what you start to do. That's what I did as a judge. Well, God, I remember that kind of like happened, and I remember that happened. And you would sit there and you would internalize the case in front of you and relate it to what was going on or what had gone on in your life. In all of my experiences in my life, seeing 2 men shot in front of our home, I didn't see the shooting, but I saw at the age of 16, 2 dead men laying in front of our home in Detroit.
Yeah.
Those things made me a better person. Those experiences. And why did I have all those experiences? It's weird. And why did I end up becoming a judge?
Was it hard to be on the bench and be human like that with your own?
No. For me, I was very open. I was very open, and I would share my life stories with people sometimes. Like, I remember when this happened in my life, and I remember my house was broken into. When my house was broken into when I was a judge, the entire bar was afraid to bring their home invasion cases to me because, man, she's going to be a bitch, right? She's going to rip our people apart. And when my case came to trial, and the judge, they pled guilty, it was a man and woman that broke into my home. The judge said, "What would you like to say?" And I probably could have communicated before with the judge. I could have called that judge. I knew it would have been unethical. I didn't do anything. I went like everyone else to that hearing, and I said, "Listen, Judge, I don't want you to put them in prison. I just want my stuff back." And I left it at that. So, you internalize that. I felt bad that these people had these issues with addiction because they sold all my jewelry. They got rid of all my stuff. I didn't get any stuff back. But what was it going to accomplish for me to say, put them in prison? It wasn't going to accomplish anything for me. And I'm hopeful that they appreciated that I spoke that way. I mean, the one guy he was a habitual fourth, and he did end up doing time. But it wasn't because I went and said, do it, put them in prison. They deserve the rot. I don't believe that. So my experiences made me a better judge, in my opinion.
Your mom just died of old age?
Yeah,
or
basically. Yeah.
hard to let her go?
No, like with people, when you see them suffer, you see them decline. There's a time for everything. It wasn't, where I was devastated by it. No, growing up in the funeral home, I saw death at all ages. I saw people die for various reasons, and it was time. And it was letting go. There was nothing more that could be done.
Well, I'm curious. How long were you a judge? When did you transition? When did you retire?
At what age?
Or how long ago? Or
I retired in 2016 as a circuit judge, in 2017 from that federal job.
Oh, fairly recently.
Yeah.
But it had been a while. You said you've been sober for 17 years.
It'll be 17 years at the end of the month.
And your mother's death kind of prompted that.
Yeah, I stopped drinking that year that she had passed away. And that same year, when I made that decision to stop, my brother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And 15 months after my mom died, my brother died. So I watched him die. And then just this past year, I lost 2 brothers in 8 months. One died of lung cancer and the other had a heart attack.
God, I'm sorry.
So, when people say, people were worried you're going to start drinking, and that thought process never occurred to me. I'm very fortunate that I'm strong-willed, and when I make a commitment, I'm committed to it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who have addiction issues don't have that strong will, and they need the help. They need to go to AA. They need to have that support. And I'm very fortunate that I'm a strong-willed person. I wish I could do it with food. I'm working on that, but it doesn't work the same.
The strong will.
Yeah, the strong will.
I was going to ask you, for people who have addiction, do you have a few recommendations for them about sobriety?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that you've got a problem and that you want to be helped. If you don't recognize it and you don't reach out for help, it's never going to work. And you can't do it for someone else. I can't get sober for a spouse. I can't get sober for my kids. I can't stop using drugs for them. I'm going to do it for me. And it starts with, I need to do it for me to get healthy for them, maybe, but I want to change. And people always say, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to stop drugs for you. It's not going to work. And they would stand in front of me and tell me that, and I would look at them and I'd say, it's not going to work. You got to do it for you. You can't do it for your spouse. You can't do it for you. You got to do it for you. So that's the first thing that I always say. Are you ready to do this for you?
Mm-hmm. Are you ready?
Yeah. And a lot of people, yeah, I'm ready. And I would like, they're not ready. You know why? It was the person that stood in front of me and would say, Judge, I'm just tired and I want to stop. It was the key word, tired. I just don't want to live like this anymore. Mm-hmm. Those people I knew were committed. And sobriety is a daily thing. It's not something where, you stop and it goes away. I walk into a liquor store and I see my favorite drink was blackberry brandy. I loved blackberry brandy. And I'll see it on the shelf and I'll think, how easy would it be? I'd just buy a bottle and start drinking again. But that's not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go backwards. I want to continue going frontwards. And that's how people have to view it. You can't go back. And if you do have a relapse, it's not the end of the world. You pick up yourself and you do it all over again and you start again until finally you're able to say, I don't need it anymore. I relapsed a lot when I tried. I wanted to stop drinking a long time before I actually stopped. I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to do it. The longest I went was 18 months at one point. But I wasn't ready. I still needed that crutch. I hadn't confronted my demons. And you need to confront your demons.
What were your demons?
Well, the demons were how I felt at the end of the day from my job and what I was seeing, and my resentment toward having to take care of my mom. Those kinds of things.
Things that you talked about.
Things that you need to resolve, and understand that you're not going to change them. You got to deal with it, but you can't deal with it in a way where you're going to destroy your health and your life.
How else did you deal with the difficult things you saw as a judge besides the bicycle? Like, were there mental things? I'm thinking about.
I learned how to deal in the moment with a case. Took me, and a judge told me, it's going to take you some time, a very seasoned judge when I first got elected. I learned how to deal with what was in front of me at that moment, and I would leave it.
How do you do that? Let me, you know, like, I just worked 6 days in a row in the ER. It's incredible, the shit that we see,
sure.
too.
Yeah.
And you always want to keep...
You see it before I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different part of the same story.
Right.
You want to maintain this humanity and compassion where you care, but there's a balance of that with, and I have to see the next patient, and I have to go home at the end of the day, and I don't want to take on too much of this, or I won't be able to do this job and I'll be miserable. So how do you do that? You said you learned how to do that in the case.
I learned that I had to put it on a shelf. I had to deal with it, put it on the shelf, because there were 30 more cases. And on average, I was doing 25 cases a day. So by the time the day ended, I learned that I can't go back. I can't change what I did. I've got to live in the moment. I've got to do my very best in this particular case. I've got to then do the next case. And then I've got to do the next case. And then I got to just leave it all and go home. I didn't leave them all. Don't get me wrong. There are times when I still took them home.
Yeah.
But as I developed as a judge, I learned. I don't know how I learned it, but I was able to do it.
Somehow you were able to do your best
Because
on the
there was
case
so
and
much.
then let
like
it
you.
go.
You know, how many cases do you see in your shift? You know, do you remember that first one? You don't remember it, do you? By the end of the shift, do you remember the very first thing that you did?
On the day, yes. Yeah. The next day, probably not.
Because then you got to deal with the next stuff.
Because you go to the next one.
You know, and it took years to be able to develop that. But, you know, and another concept that I think really needs to be looked at is judges suffering from PTSD. And I know that that might sound strange, but I never thought that that would happen to me.
It makes total sense to me.
I had a case where a young woman was walking in a trail by herself on her bicycle. She was abducted. She was murdered. And someone said to me, hey, you want to do a fundraiser? We're going to be walking through the trails. You got to walk 2 miles, you know, a buck or whatever money, you know, you raise for this. I said, yeah, I can walk 2 miles, no big deal. So I get on this trail, and I had just moved to Florida, didn't know anybody, so I'm walking by myself. And I got this feeling, and it was like the whole case just came in front of me. And I thought, oh my God, this is just like that case. And I never had that happen to me before.
Flashback almost.
Yeah. You know, where all of a sudden I was afraid. I'm like looking over. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I don't know who's over there. I don't know who's hiding behind that tree. And I never experienced that before.
Because you had seen were there pictures of it that you had looked at?
Death and,
this is the location, and then you just in the middle of it went, oh wow, this is
yeah, and I never thought that that would happen. And there are times when I'll just be walking and
spooky.
Something will say, man, I remember that case? And it was like, that's just like what something reminded me of.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think as I get older, I'm going to forget more, I'm hoping, about the cases, you know. But you live with that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You know, the young man who was killed by a drunk driver, he went out with his brother at 11:30 at night to go to a movie. They were twins. They wanted to go to a movie. Got killed. One of the twins got killed. The one who didn't get killed blamed himself because he was the one that wanted to go to the movie, and he dragged his twin brother. And you look in the audience and you see this poor, you know, he was like 16, 17-year-old kid, just grieving, full of, you know, it was all my fault. I'm sorry that this happened. It wasn't your fault. It was that damn drunk driver's fault.
Right.
You know, all those
blaming
things,
yourself.
you know, that you see, you know, make you a very caring person, I think, in the end.
So you've been retired for a few years now. What was it like before you retired? Why did you retire?
I just got tired. I was burnt out. You know,
too much? Too many hours? Too many cases? Too
I had
much
a double
of this
criminal
stuff?
docket. I had a double criminal docket, and it was just nonstop. You know, I was going nonstop. I was doing 25, 30 cases a day. I was taking guilty pleas all day long. I would have probation violators come in, and I was just tired.
Why is a guilty plea? That's harder?
Well, no, because it's repetitive.
Oh, the
What's
same
your name?
thing.
How old are you? Can you read, write, and understanding? And there's like 35 questions that I ask that I wake up in the middle of the night reciting to my dog. You know, what's your name? Oh, you know, because it's just you get in that role and it becomes a repetitive thing. And I was tired and I wanted to change. And I thought the answer lied in being an administrative law judge, and it didn't. It was too confining for me.
I see.
Now,
so now you've kind of gotten into some TV stuff. How did
isn't
that happen?
incredible? I was very fortunate to be interviewed by Lester Holt, and I was a featured story on Dateline. And Lester Holt came out, and Dateline NBC did a documentary. They followed me for about 3 months. They followed I think 3 or 4 of my drug court candidates and how the drug court changed their lives or didn't help them in their life. And it was an hour long. It was called Scary Mary Presiding. I was very flattered to have Lester interview me because apparently at the time he would only interview 2 or 3 people a year. And then that became the YouTube thing, and the next thing I knew, I got contacted by people from Stage 29, which is Dr. Phil, and they asked me if I wanted to come out and be on the doctors, and that they wanted to work on trying to get me my own show. So that's how that all worked out. It's exciting. Yeah.
And
it was a total change, nothing that I ever expected. I mean, nothing that I ever dreamed of. It wasn't even the realm of, is this really possible?
How have you liked this compared to being on the bench?
I don't have to watch what I say anymore when I'm on TV. When I was on the bench, I had the watchdog, the Judicial Tenure Commission, so I couldn't just tell you the way I really saw it because I had to temper it. But on that great show we were on, Face the Truth, Dr. Judy and I could just tell it the way I saw it without any temper.
You like that?
Just, you would sit up there and you think, what kind of jerk are you? And you want to say that, but you can't say that. Why are you so stupid you don't see what you're doing? You can't talk like that. But on the show I was able to, so it was kind of cool. I could really say what I was thinking.
This is like all of this pent up, what you really wanted to tell these guys for decades.
I still tempered it, but you want to be a little polite. But it's been exciting. It's an ability to try to still in the show reach out and help people. And have that accomplishment.
What you really want to say. So if you had your own show, what would it be?
Just like our show, Face the Truth. I thought it was phenomenal where you bring in your spouse who's got an addiction issue and you say, I'm bringing my spouse. You confront her in front of us. We confront her. We ask her why. And then in the end, we give her a rehab. We put her in a nice rehab center, try to help her and get her on the right road. That's what I want to do with my life. I still want to be a judge, but in a capacity where I can do it and follow through with it.
Somehow help people and kind of use all of
and that's what Face the Truth did. It was a great show for doing that because we helped a lot of people.
It sounds so confrontational. I worry that people might be so embarrassed and shamed of that kind of approach that it would be counterproductive. No?
Well, we helped a lot of people.
Made a difference.
Yeah, we saved a lot of people. People who had issues with weight problems, young people who we sent to camps to help them learn nutrition. I mean, that was very exciting for me. People who are being taken by these scammers from Nigeria who email, fall in love with it, and you have them send money, try to get them into therapy to make them realize that all you're doing is getting scammed. There's a different way. Yeah. It was very beneficial. We all felt good at the end of the day that we could help people.
I will. This is embarrassing. I'll say this, but I almost sent a check for. I know.
Larry.
I was in medical school. I can't believe. No, this is what it was. I got a fake, cashier's check from. Not maybe Western Union or something, and they're like, here, cash this money and then send us a whatever, and there was some
sob story. And we'll send you back triple.
Right. No, I forget what it was, but it was terrible. Now, sitting here telling you this, it was an awful, stupid thing, and I went down and I went so far as to even hand it to Western Union, wherever, and they looked at one and second, they're like, yeah, this is a fake, and I was just like, to vomit because I almost had gone through. It was like $1,000 or something. Enough that
you feel a little stupid.
A little stupid. God, I feel really stupid now. Even telling this story.
I love people when you walk in the store. Come here, we got this free thing for you. Come on, get your free knife. And I look at them and say, listen, there's nothing in this world that's free. So what's the gimmick? And I don't have the time for the gimmick. So thanks anyway.
That was a stupid moment, but I didn't do it.
Good, Larry. Good job. Thank you. But it's rewarding, and especially to have the ability to have the rehab centers open up and want to help as well. Obviously they were getting the free advertisement because their names would be mentioned in the show, but they were giving great gifts to people and genuinely wanted to help them as well. So it was a good feeling, and I want that feeling. I want to keep helping people recognize that there is a life out there, and it's a good life if you just give it a chance. But you're the only one who can make the changes.
What would you tell somebody who, I'm thinking about, the 18-year-old Mary, scary Mary, who had this judge dream. What is your message to people that have that dream and want something?
Never let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Because I had many, many people tell me, you're never going to get elected, you're never going to make it, it's the old boys club, you're never going to be accepted. And I struggled once I got elected in terms of being accepted by the club. I was one of only 2 women on the bench. There was the old boys club, you don't interfere with them, you don't interfere with the politics, and I struggled because I was so young as well.
How did you navigate that world?
I made it clear that I meant business. The attorneys, the older attorney males that would come in and try to manipulate me and tell me that they knew more than me.
Like intimidate you?
Yeah, the one attorney, I said, listen, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this any longer. You walk outside this courtroom, you turn around and you look at whose name is on that door, and it's mine. This is my courtroom, and I'm going to run it the way I like it, and if you don't like my decisions, you can go to the Court of Appeals, because that's what they're there for. And then that word started getting around. She's tough bitch, man. Don't screw with her. And they left me alone. I needed to establish myself.
That was kind of asserting yourself and
yes.
drawing those lines in the
yes.
sand, being tough.
This is who I am, and I'm not going to change what I believe to accommodate somebody or something. I'm not going to be a member of the club. I am an independent. Our judges are independent. We don't belong to a political party. And in my mind, that means something very special. I am not beholden to any political party as a judge. I am who I am, and I represent all of the people, not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans.
How do you do that? I've always found that to be kind of confusing, how judges are not partisan. But of course, they're going to vote Democrat or Republican. It seems messy to me. It seems unclear. Supreme Court judge is a great example, right? They're obviously the Republican appointees. They expect them are going to vote a certain way.
Well, our Supreme Court justices are appointed by a political party, that being the president, whoever it is at that time. But in the state judges, I truly believe that I was independent. When I go to vote, I vote for the person. I don't vote for party lines.
You're not a partisan politic person.
It could be a total idiot up there, and I'm going to vote for them because they're a Republican or they're a Democrat. No, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to do the best for me, which puts me in a quandary because now I'm thinking about running for prosecuting attorney back home in Michigan.
Oh, you're going to get back
and I have to pick a political party.
You can't be independent.
I could be, but it could be suicide because an independent very rarely wins.
I see.
Do I take the chance to say, I am an independent. I've always been independent. I represent each and every one of you, not just a political party. And that's a big risk for me to do. And I don't know what I'm going to do just yet as to where I'm going to align myself.
So wait a minute. This would be running for what?
Prosecuting attorney in Macomb County, Michigan.
What is that?
It's
like attorney, not attorney general.
He's the guy that brings the charges, the criminal charges. He's the one that says, charge him with murder, charge him with robbery, charge him with whatever.
Is that
crime.
not synonymous with DA?
Yeah, it's district attorney.
Okay.
We don't call it that. We call him a prosecuting attorney.
Okay.
So, I believe
it's quite a decision in front of you.
Yeah, but that job should be independent too. If you're, should a prosecutor be a Republican or a Democrat? They represent all of the people when they bring their charges, not just the Democrats, not just
but Republicans and Democrats have very different ideas about,
philosophies.
Justice in the courts.
Well, they have different philosophies.
Lock them away versus rehab and all these kind of things. So it makes sense to me that there is politics involved in that, but you're more independent.
No, I think I'm very independent, but I think a prosecutor should be independent and represent all of the people, not just a side. You know, because you've got Democrats living in the county, you've got Republicans, you've got Tea Party, you've got independents.
You're going to bust those marijuana.
How we just make our own party up, right?
What are we going to call it?
I don't know.
Scary
Mary
Larry.
Party, huh? Scary Mary.
You going to bust those marijuana criminals?
If they're not following the law. That's why we've got laws, man.
Good answer.
Well, I took an oath to follow the law, whatever it might be. You know, I can't.
What about when the law is immoral and unjust?
I still have to follow the law.
Oh, I think you have a responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Unjust laws. How about that one?
Sometimes I would take a position. We had certain laws in Michigan that made certain things mandatory, which I disagreed with, like lifetime tether for major drug offenders. And I would not sentence someone to that because I believe that once they completed their probationary status or once they completed their jail term or their prison term, they paid their debt to society. And to say that it's lifetime, I thought that was cruel and unusual, and I refused to take and sentence someone to that.
Are there some things you think are lifetime sentences? Deserve
Murder.
a lifetime sentence? Murder. One murder.
First degree murder, yeah.
What do you think about the death penalty?
I disagree with it, and I think that that's part of my Catholic upbringing. I don't think it, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I don't believe in that.
You like
I don't think it serves
Sister Helen Prejean, that movie. What was it? Dead Man Walking? Wasn't that her movie?
Yeah.
I saw her speak once. She was great.
And you never really know for sure if it's just you don't know for sure, and I would never want to have to sentence someone to death.
A lot of innocents on death row.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
And that's scary.
That's it's disturbing. Judge Mary, this has been fun.
Has it really, Larry?
Yeah, I had a good time.
So, Larry, let me ask you something.
As the interview is ending, I'll answer anything
you
want as long as it's
have
not
you
about
ever been
jury duty.
summons for jury duty? What happened with jury duty, Larry?
My recollection, it's a little foggy as I get older.
Listen, let me give you the spill I would give 500 people sitting out there waiting for jury duty. There are 3 things you're asked to do as a citizen. If you're a male, you might be drafted. You might. We haven't had that in place for a long, long time, 70s, really. You have to pay your taxes. If you don't do that, then you suffer consequences, right? So the only other thing you have to do as a citizen of the United States is jury duty. Is it really that bad to give up some time for all the freedoms that we have? And let's reflect on all of the men and women out there fighting wars for us so that we have these freedoms. Is it really that tough to give back to society a few days of jury duty, a month of jury duty? Because we really have the greatest.
A month.
We have the greatest life here in America, right?
I can give you a few days.
We have the greatest life here in America.
I'll give you a month, I'd go broke.
Larry. All right, you weren't taping that anyway, so.
We're totally cutting that. Okay, so our tradition here is we ask the guest to close us out. You say goodbye and give the thanks for watching, see you later. However you do you.
Court is adjourned. Have a great night. Have a great day.
Is there somewhere people can follow you on?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm, on Facebook.
What's
I have a
your
page.
handle?
Scary Mary.
Scary Mary.
Scary Judge Mary. Or Judge Scary Mary.
Judge Scary Mary
Judge
on
Scary.
Instagram.
And
Facebook.
And Facebook. That's about it.
Great. Thank you very much for coming.
It's been fun.
This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe to this on the YouTube channel and Apple Podcasts. If you have a moment or you know someone who does, reach out to me on social media, Dr. Larry Burchett. We will see you next time.
Master teacher, the way I like to define it, is in the dance world, somebody who's had a very lucrative or versatile career as a dancer and potentially worked in multiple areas and is now sharing that knowledge and that passion with the younger generation.